Chapter 1 Ordinary Beginning. Amidst a sea of clattering keyboards and muted conversation, the Chennai Chronicle office buzzed with the vibrancy of another day of news. Old fans turned lazily overhead, doing little to combat the humid heat that pressed against the large, sunlit windows. Outside, Chennai sprawled in a dance of tradition and modernity. Auto rickshaws darted in between sleek cars while the tantalizing scent of sambar wafted through the air, merging with the sharper aroma of freshly brewed coffee from a nearby cafe. In a corner cubicle, Maya sat hunched over her desk, her fingers typing rapidly as her eyes flitted over her notes. The chaos around her didn't faze her, she had long mastered the art of tuning it out. Her dark hair fell forward, almost shielding the keen determination evident in her eyes. Every so often, she'd push her glasses up the bridge of her nose, a habit that had become second nature. Rajan's steps slowed as he approached Maya's cubicle, adjusting the grip on the thick stack of papers he held, their edges threatening to spill from his hands. The overhead light caught a hint of perspiration on his forehead, and his shirt collar seemed to be one button looser than it should be. "Do you have a minute, Maya?" he asked, trying to peek over the tall partition that separated their workspaces. He leaned slightly, causing the uppermost papers in his hand to wobble dangerously. Maya looked up from her screen, startled. The intense focus in her eyes gave way to mild irritation, then softened into recognition. Brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear, she eyed the pile in Rajan's grasp. "Did you rob the printer again?" she teased. Rajan grinned sheepishly. "Well, I might have been a bit enthusiastic with the print button. But hey, that's not why I'm here." Her eyebrows rose in a playful challenge. "Only if it's about the meta interview," she replied. Her tone held an edge, but her eyes twinkled with mirth. Rolling his eyes, Rajan chuckled, "Always so direct, aren't we?" "Yes, it's about that. I've got some new leads, some really juicy stuff. I'll email you the details in a bit." Maya's posture relaxed, her initial irritation now completely replaced with interest. "Really? Juicy leads, you say?" She leaned back in her chair, her intrigued gaze locked onto Rajan. "All right, you've piqued my curiosity." Rajan winked, striking an exaggerated pose of triumph. "Thought that might get your attention. Check your inbox in a few." She grinned, her earlier focus now diverted. "Will do." "And Rajan?"
"Yeah."
She motioned to the tottering stack he was holding. "Maybe next time, consider a digital memo?" He laughed, duly noted. Turning to leave, he shot her one last playful glance, "Always full of helpful tips, aren't you?" She simply nodded, the corners of her mouth curving into a smile. "Just looking out for the trees. Thanks for the update." Amidst the rhythmic tap-tap-tap of keyboards and the distant murmurs of conversations, the soft hum of the office was suddenly disturbed by the shrill ring of Maya's desk phone. It wasn't a sound she often heard. Most of her communication was done through her computer or personal cell. She paused, fingers hovering above her keyboard, before turning slowly to face the offensive noise. The display glowed ominously. "Unknown," it blinked at her in bold letters. Maya's eyebrows furrowed, her full lips pressed into a thin line. She wasn't fond of unexpected calls. Drawing a breath, she picked up the receiver with a graceful yet hesitant hand. "Maya Krishnan speaking. How can I assist you?" Silence filled the other end, punctuated by a labored exhale. It was the sort of pause that spoke volumes, the type filled with a weighty hesitation. When the voice finally came through, it held an edge of uncertainty, its timbre quivering ever so slightly. "Ms. Krishnan?" "Yes, speaking." "Who is this?" "This is Inspector Vijay from the Chennai City Police." The formality in his voice did little to ease her growing concern. Her heart rate quickened, her chest tightened, and she gripped the pen on her desk a little too firmly. "Inspector Vijay? Is something wrong?" Taking a moment, he cleared his throat, choosing his words carefully. "I regret to inform you, Ms. Krishnan, there's been an incident involving your uncle. He has passed away, and the circumstances are, well, they're not straightforward." Every noise around her, every bit of ambient office sound seemed to fade away. The world narrowed down to this one phone call, this one life-changing moment. Her grip on reality was tenuous, the words barely registering. Her hand tightened around the edge of the desk, knuckles standing out starkly against her skin. Mysterious? What do you mean, mysterious? Inspector Vijay sighed, the weight of his duty apparent. I understand this is a lot to take in, Ms. Krishnan. There are some aspects we need to clarify. It's best if we discuss them in person. Can you come down to the station? There are also some formalities that need your attention. Maya felt like she was in a dream, her surroundings blurry, the inspector's voice echoing as if from a great distance. She tried to anchor herself, focusing on the cool touch of the phone against her ear. Of course, Inspector. I'll come in. Just give me some time. The inspector's voice softened, a note of sympathy piercing through. Take the time you need, Ms. Krishnan. I truly am sorry for your loss. We'll wait for you. She gave a faint nod, realizing he couldn't see it. Thank you, Inspector. She whispered, hanging up the phone. As the line went dead, the weight of the call settled on her. Memories, some cherished, some long buried, threatened to overwhelm her. She sat there, frozen, as the ring of her phone echoed in her ears, realizing that in just a few seconds, the predictable rhythm of her day had been irrevocably altered. As the world outside continued its unrelenting march, Maya found herself trapped in an all-too-familiar past. The sounds of the office faded, replaced by the distant screech of tires and the haunting echo of a lullaby her mother used to sing. It was the same song playing on the radio when the news about the accident had come all those years ago. Her parents, with their vibrant smiles and never-ending love, had been snatched away on a rain-drenched Chennai night. The details of the accident remained blurred in her memory. What persisted, however, was the gut-wrenching void it had left. Why do I do this? She whispered to herself, the weight of her uncle's death adding another layer to her already burdened heart. All this searching for truth when my own truths are too painful to confront. The words hung in the air, a tangible embodiment of the grief she'd tucked away for so long. It was easier to dive into the world's mysteries, to seek the truth out there, than to face the truths within. Rajan leaned against the door of Maya's cubicle, his brow creased with concern as he watched her, seemingly lost in a sea of memories. He cleared his throat softly, trying to bridge the palpable distance. Hey, Maya, he began hesitantly. Everything okay? Maya looked up, her eyes shimmering with a sheen of unshed tears. It's my uncle, she whispered, her voice choked. He's gone, Rajan. And it's not just that. They said it was under mysterious circumstances. Rajan's eyes widened in shock. He moved closer, pulling a chair to sit beside her. Oh, Maya. I'm so sorry. I can't even imagine how you must be feeling. She took a shaky breath, trying to steady herself. It's just that. After losing my parents, he was all Kiran and I had. He was our anchor, Rajan. And now, this. It's like being lost at sea all over again. Rajan reached out, gently covering her hand with his. I wish there were words, any words, that could make this better. Just know you're not alone, Maya. I'm here. We're all here for you. Maya nodded, squeezing his hand in gratitude. It's just so hard, Rajan. The not knowing. The mystery of it all. I always seek the truth in my stories, but now it's personal. I need to know what happened. Rajan's gaze was steady, filled with empathy. And you will, Maya. But for now, take the time you need to grieve, to process. The answers will come in time. She looked into his eyes, finding a glimmer of solace in the midst of her storm. Thank you, Rajan. It means more than you know. As Maya sat, drowning in memories, a soft touch on her shoulder startled her back to the present. She looked up to see the familiar, comforting eyes of Kiran, her younger brother. The busy ambience of the office seemed far removed, like a distant hum, as Maya tried to process the devastating news. The sudden and unexpected presence of a familiar voice amidst the corporate hum broke through her shock. Akka? Maya lifted her gaze to see Kiran, her younger brother. The anguish in her eyes deepened, and without a word, she got up and wrapped her arms around him tightly. Rajan watched, momentarily taken aback, then with understanding. "I can't believe it, Kiran," she whispered, her voice muffled against his shoulder. "Uncle was the last piece of home we had left. After everything he did for us. How can he just be gone?" Kiran, his own eyes misted with tears, held her tighter. "I know, Akka. I can't fathom it either. But we have each other. We've faced the worst storms together, and we'll weather this one too." Drawing back slightly to look at her, he gently wiped away her tears. "Uncle would want us to be strong. Remember how he'd always say, 'Life is fleeting, but love endures'?" Rajan, deeply moved by their bond, approached cautiously. "Kiran, it's good you're here. I'll leave you two to talk." Kiran nodded in gratitude, while Maya took a shaky breath, finding solace in her brother's presence amidst the bleakness of the day. The ancient temple, surrounded by the throbbing heart of Chennai, was not just a monument of faith to Maya and Kiran, it was home. It was within its walls and amidst its corridors that they had spent countless hours, finding solace in its shadows after the tragic accident that had stolen their parents. The noise of the modern world seemed to vanish as Maya looked at Kiran, a somber air enveloping them. Their shared memories, at once painful and comforting, bridged the silence between them. "Do you remember," Kiran began, his voice holding a wistful note, "how Uncle would make us sit on the temple steps every evening after the Aarti, and tell us stories about our lineage? About how our family had been the temple's guardians for generations?" Maya's eyes softened with recollection. "And how he'd weave in tales of our parents' youth, describing Mom's laughter echoing in the temple courtyards and Dad's mischievous pranks. He made them come alive for us when the world outside only offered pity." Kiran's eyes glistened. After the car crash, when everything seemed dark and cold, the temple's sanctuary and Uncle's stories were the only warmth. "He didn't just become our guardian, he became our guide, our anchor. And the temple, with its timeless rituals and stories, became our refuge." Maya leaned in closer, her voice choked with emotion. "He'd say that the deities in the temple were not just stone idols but listeners, absorbing all our fears, our tears, our hopes. He made us believe that our parents were there too, watching over us. Every chant, every ritual, was a bridge to them." Kiran nodded, adding, "And even when he sent us off to school, making sure we got the best education, he'd remind us, the world outside is vast and challenging. But remember, the temple's doors are always open. And so is my heart." It's like he knew that blending the modern with the ancient would make us whole. The two siblings shared a tearful smile, drawing comfort from each other and the memories of their uncle, the man who had shielded them from life's storms, always pointing them to the sanctuary that was their ancestral temple.